Welcome back to Under Oath. Today we have journalist and author Jake Tapper. Jake, can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. You've had a busy year. You've written a couple books. You got this great job, and I think the Fourth Estate takes a ridiculous amount of heat. Actually, in the last 2 years, I mean, does it feel hotter than it used to be?
It does, but I think that is mainly because of there has become the monetization of hate and the monetization of villains. There are not just cable channels, but now algorithms in our social media that are demonizing people, demonizing news media, demonizing anybody who's on the other side of a political issue, and on and on and on. It's not even Democrats versus Republicans. It's just like whatever tribe that person is warring against that day. And yeah, I mean, news media is definitely part of that. And I don't think it's particularly healthy for democracy. And I don't think it's particularly honest for the people doing it. But it's pretty blatantly about money grabs. That's what it seems to me anyway.
It feels like, I got a degree in journalism. I'm an attorney licensed in 18 states. I've had issues with the press before when it comes to certain things. And when I've been on high profile cases trying to go, no, that didn't happen in court. Why are you reporting it that way? And I think it's the headline. It's always been about if it bleeds, it leads. And if you later find out there was no blood, you read about that on page 20.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, that is, look, anybody in media should spend a day being written about or covered, and you get an idea of how unfair it can be. And I certainly have seen that from both sides, both somebody saying to me, hey, you're not being fair, this is what really happened, and also me feeling that way. But generally speaking, I think most reporters try to do the best job they can in situations they're given. Now, that said, we're in a media world now where people pretty openly are writing clickbait, and it doesn't really even matter if it's true or not. And I feel bad for this next generation of journalists coming up at a time where writing, it's not even clickbait, it's rage bait, right?
Yep.
It's about making people mad. And that's not what journalism is supposed to be. And look, I know that there's a long history of outrage journalism in this country, and that's not necessarily a bad thing if there are real things to be outraged about. Like the stock houses in Chicago at the turn of the century or whatever, the turn of the 20th century. But so much of it is based on editors, not the reporters necessarily, saying, write about this, and it's, again, the monetization of rage is very, it's unhealthy. And I'm sorry that you went through that as an attorney.
Yeah. The problem is you see it all the time, but I actually caught a moment that I'll never forget. I was sitting in a restaurant, and there were people from the local paper, the Orlando Sentinel, and I was listening to the head editor, and he was discussing the stories he wanted to write for the next year and what topics he wanted to talk about. And I was sitting there going, is this how we decide things now? Do we just go, okay, this is the alley we want to go down? And he was going, and we're not going to do any stories about this anymore. We're just going to stick with this one, this one, this one. And I was thinking about how choreographed the information we receive is now. And, depending if this is like my mother watches you all the time. She tells me she got excited when she goes, oh, who are you interviewing this week? And I told her the guys from Duck Dynasty yesterday and Jake Tapper today. And she goes, oh, I love him. And everything that comes out of your mouth, she believes no matter what. And I mean, that's a ridiculous amount of power to have. And I can't imagine the responsibility you feel on a daily basis.
I do feel a responsibility about it. And I do feel a responsibility to be fair and to not spend my show demonizing anyone, other than like maybe Jeffrey Epstein. But that's just reporting facts about Jeffrey Epstein. And no, I take that very seriously. I take that like with a real, and I think it's, to the degree that I've earned any of it, it's because I have learned lessons about fairness. And we all learn lessons. Most of the lessons we learn are from our mistakes, not our successes. So, I mean, I really do try, and I want your mother to know that I take that responsibility seriously.
Now, your new book that just came out discusses a trial and the basically the gathering of evidence and the building of the case against an Al Qaeda terrorist. And I got to read a little bit of it, and I got to look at some of the facts of the case. And as an attorney who used to do criminal defense a long time ago, I'm sitting here going, God, there are just so many issues in here as an attorney to be concerned
Yeah,
about.
yeah. So the story is about the race the race of U.S. prosecutors had to build a case against an Al Qaeda terrorist. He was in the custody of the Italian government, and the Italians didn't want to hold him for much longer. And the Americans, because it was during the Obama years, you couldn't just ship him the Gitmo, had to build a case so that they could get him indicted and they could get him extradited. And so the book is mainly about the detective work and the sleuthing and building the case. But there's also, as you note, all these legal issues. The Spin Ghoul is the name of the terrorist. He comes to the United States. He has defense attorneys, and they are trying to build a defense for him. So we talk about the laws of combat. If an Al Qaeda terrorist kills Americans in a battle zone, American service members in a battle zone, is that even against the law? And if so, why? We talk about competency. Here is a guy who is acting bizarre in court, although people are suspicious that maybe it's an act, not real incompetence. Where is the line there? And we get into all sorts of issues having to do with prosecution and defense. But at its heart, it's basically a detective book. I wrote it like a thriller, like a fiction thriller, but it is 100% true. And it's about the hard work of these prosecutors and FBI agents to build this incredible case that they built so that this terrorist could be extradited, could be indicted, and would be found guilty. So he would be locked away forever. So he wouldn't do what he wanted to do, his life's purpose, to kill as many Americans as possible.
Now, I have so many views on this because I also served in the Middle East a long time ago. And as a soldier, I look at it, and as an attorney, I go, there is almost zero chance that a guy like this could get a fair trial in this country. I mean, it's practically zero because, who's going to say, well, I don't love an American soldier. This isn't a random person. This is somebody being tried in the middle of America from an act that happened, on the other side of the planet in front of a jury of his peers. We're not even close to a jury of this guy's peers.
Well, yes and no. Let me just say this. So this story that I tell in the book is the only example ever of a foreign terrorist tried in a U.S. criminal court for killing service members, U.S. service members in a war zone. It had never happened before, and it still hasn't happened. Although Trump is trying to do it with a second guy who was behind the Abbey Gate bombing. But before Obama tried to do that, there was the case of a guy named Galani. And this is in the book. Galani is, to this day, the only Gitmo detainee ever tried in a U.S. criminal court. And he's brought to the United States for trial for his role in the 1998 U.S. Embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania. And the judge, in hearing the evidence, throws out a witness. And because they only learned the U.S. only learned the name of the witness through Galani being tortured by the CIA. And so there is a judge upholding the U.S. Constitution, doing what he thinks is right. And then the jury acquits Galani of 284 out of 285 charges. So when you say, I don't know that somebody could get a fair trial, I don't know that that's true. We only have two examples, really, of foreign individuals being tried in such a way. One is Galani and the other is Spin Ghoul. And Galani almost walked. So I don't know.
When we talk about that, and this is from my experience, the toughest thing you can get is a solid jury. And I found out in my earlier career that it doesn't matter how good your facts are. If your jury doesn't buy it, like if I have a case in Tennessee, for example, and I have an African American client, and I'm looking at a sea of white, I've seen them not care. I've seen the level of I don't give a damn. Now, who is going to care even the slightest about this guy from a foreign country and everything else like that in a situation like this? And I know that the example you gave before was a solid one, but at the same time, they're looking at this guy going, he must have done something. That in every criminal case, they stare at the client and they say the same thing. He wouldn't be here if he didn't do something.
Right.
And he had 3 years of of testimony in the with the Italians and everything. And listen, I'm disgusted by the act. I'm not going to defend a terrorist.
Right.
But at the same time, I can't even how close you can be if there are no bad actors other than you. Like you mentioned before that, they had to throw witnesses out because of certain issues. But if you can't find a bad actor worse than the one you're representing, you're going to lose that case every time.
So I hear what you're saying, but the question is, what do you do with this guy? I guess the question is just, so Spin Ghoul, is picked up during the Arab Spring by the Italians in this kind of fantastical way. And the Americans do all this work, the prosecutors, the criminal court, to prove a case against him. The options for the U.S. are let him walk, I guess, drone him, put him in a military tribunal, or try him in a U.S. criminal court. I mean, those are the options. Now, for the Americans, they said, we can't let him walk. He has stated, and we believe him, that his goal is to kill as many Americans as possible. So that's not an option. So then it's like, well, do we drone him, which is obviously against international law, although maybe it would happen. I don't know. And then it's just a military tribunal or U.S. criminal court. So it's just a bunch of, the problem is the evil and the willingness to kill. And so then I guess I would ask you, Jeff, what would you do with him?
I think what has to happen, we've made huge mistakes in the last 2 or 3 years, and we're still making them now. And we call that, I guess the term lawfare came up, where when we feel we're morally right, we're going to do things that are highly unusual in our court systems. We're going to create things to bring somebody to court in a place we don't normally do this because we think we're morally right. And that scares the crap out of me because I've been in front of judges my whole life that thought they were morally right when they were absolutely so far on the wrong side of things.
Well, they all think that.
Yeah, and that's a frightening thing. So we're going to say, well, we don't know what to do, so let's do something we've never done before. And anytime you screw with the law like that, you bring, whether it be the Trump stuff or the stuff they're doing now, when you go, okay, well, we don't really have the law the way we want it to have it. So let's kind of work around. We'll start piecemealing stuff.
Right. Let's take 2 misdemeanors and turn it into a felony.
I mean, I remember having that discussion online as an attorney. I was going, guys, you got to realize this is bizarre. And there are attorneys all over going, we don't understand this. And the comments I got? Well, maybe you don't understand the law well enough, Jeff.
Right.
And I'm going, well, I'm licensed in 18 states. I've taken 9 bars. I'm pretty good with what I'm looking at. And
no, I hear you.
Anytime we start making exceptions, whether it be for the left or the right, we start screwing with our laws and we're setting precedents that we might not want because we don't want our citizens treated like this in foreign countries. But when you open the door to that, I don't know how you close it.
Well, and this goes back to all sorts of prosecutions in terms of, quite often, as you know, the FBI will investigate somebody for a crime and they can't prove the crime, so they charge them with lying to the FBI.
Yep.
And people would probably be very surprised to hear that these allegations or charges of lying to the FBI are not based on recordings of interviews, but the notes that the FBI agent took of the interview. So there are ways to twist our justice system, and they do happen all the time, and they happen by Democrats going after Republicans and Republicans going after Democrats and prosecutors going after whatever their target is. I agree. But still, what would you do with Spin Ghoul?
I think I would stick to the system they normally use. And in a situation like this, they go, okay, we normally use a military tribunal. Okay, we're going
to. But here's the thing about the military tribunals is that they're still not working. Like to this day, 24 years after 9/11, they've gotten 2 convictions, 9 plea deals, whereas in criminal courts, more than 600 terrorists have been prosecuted and found guilty. So the criminal courts are actually more successful. And I would posit this just as food for thought, which is, I don't really have an opinion. Like, I hear what you're saying, military tribunals, and like I wrote the book like a thriller. It's not a polemic. It's not like telling people this is what you should think of the war on terror. It just is what it is. It's hopefully just a good yarn. But I look at it. I don't think it spoils it for anybody to tell you that Spin Ghoul is now locked away in a supermax for the rest of his life. And I look at what would have happened if he'd been picked up 3 years before during the Bush years. Well, he probably would have been sent to Gitmo. And then at some point, because there had not been the sleuthing, there had not been the investigation, at some point somebody would have said, we really shouldn't be holding this guy anymore. He's low-level Al-Qaeda. All we have against him is that he's confessed. We have no evidence against him. And probably, just in the interest of emptying Gitmo, which has been going on now for years, he probably would have been sent to Niger, Saudi Arabia, or wherever. And then he would have gone and tried to kill as many Americans as possible. So I think there's an argument to be made. And again, I can't prove that. That's just my speculation about Earth 2. But I think there's a case to be made that the Spin Ghoul case shows that the criminal courts can be very effective. And look, I hear your argument, and we have the judge in the book, Judge Kogan, saying something very similar. Like Obama could have done whatever he wanted to do. We didn't have to do this. He thought it was like a show trial to show off that we could do this. And he didn't think very highly of it. And that's a perfectly legitimate argument and point of view. And I wrote the book to accommodate all points of view. But I do wonder if this case does show that the criminal courts can be very effective for this kind of thing.
Well, I appreciate the other side of that. And I thank you for your time. And we've burned through it, but I could have talked to you forever. Congratulations on the new book. Be well, my friend.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.